Hi guys, Chase Holmes here. Thank you for joining me. We're going to get into our next video here about evidence for Christianity, and today I want to get into Messianic prophecies fulfilled. If you haven't listened to or read anything about Messianic prophecies, I figured this would actually be, and from what I've learned, is actually a fairly solid piece of evidence for Christianity. And so let's get right into it. So essentially, Messianic prophecy is a testament to the evidence of historical biblical events in which there were actually many fulfilled Messianic prophecies. I'm sure many of you know this, but we're going to go through these here today. Some of this is going to be repetitive, as I'm simply going to be listing a lot of these prophecies that were fulfilled, but yeah. And these prophecies help explain the reality of Christ and his coming to earth as the living God and Messiah. And so Messianic prophecies essentially predicted the life, teachings, and death of Christ, which altogether summed up Christianity, right? Because I talked about in one of my videos how Christianity is literally the life, teachings, and death of Christ. All right, so first point is that Isaiah predicts the virgin birth of Christ. So in Isaiah 53, verse 2, it says, "He grew up before him like a tender shoot and like a root out of the dry ground." This prophecy is particularly important because it actually eventually explains how Christ became the Son of Man so that we could become children of God. So I found that one pretty interesting. And then Isaiah actually prophesies of the crucifixion of Christ. I know there was a couple other prophets, at least one other prophet, but I think there's two others that did predict this. I think Zechariah would be one of them for sure. But sorry, in Isaiah 53 verse 5 through 6, it says, "But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him. And by his wounds we are healed. We all like sheep have gone astray. Each one of us has turned to our own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all." And then really interesting, Isaiah specifically prophesies about the resurrection of Christ. We're in 53 verse 10, he says, "Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand." Now you can clearly see there how it's not, if you dive into that verse in context and read about that verse, it's not talking about somebody who is simply just dying. It's clearly talking about more of the soul and more than that, and something being birthed out of that. Isaiah prophesies of the second coming of Christ. Isaiah 53:11, "After he has suffered, he will see the light of life, and he will be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities." 53:12, the next verse, "Therefore I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life unto death. And he was numbered with the transgressors, for he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors." And then I'm going to name a few more fulfilled prophecies here. One here is by Micah, chapter 5, verse 2, where the Old Testament prophets, this Old Testament prophet declared Christ would be born in Bethlehem. And then I mentioned Zechariah in chapter 11, 12 through 13. He predicts that Christ would be betrayed for 30 pieces of silver by his disciple Judas Iscariot. And in Psalm 22, David talks about death by crucifixion. That's what it was, sorry. So I got that mixed up at the start. So Zechariah predicts being betrayed by 30 pieces of silver, not crucifixion. But in conclusion, though, guys, I do believe that fulfilled prophecy to be solid evidence for Christianity. Maybe you might disagree with that, but I do believe for it to be solid evidence for Christianity. From what I've learned, more importantly, though, it is to be solid evidence for Christianity. And the claims of the Old Testament prophets are simple yet specific in outcome. If you listen to all of the prophecies that they made, they're obviously telling about something to happen that they're talking about something very specific, and they're not talking about like multiple people. They're not talking about really multiple different things. And so that's essentially what I mean by that. And there's no plausible way that these events or stories could have been planned, even by Christ himself. And I'm sure this is one of the things that skeptics and hyper-skeptics that have tried to debate people on, is that, oh, well, Christ could have just came just to fulfill what people have tried to proclaim. Or this is just something that they tried to alter in the scriptures. Well, actually, the Dead Sea Scrolls were copied at least 100 years before Christ was even born, proving that they were not altered. Okay, so I'm led to believe now, I don't know about you, but I'm led to believe now that these prophecies were truly inspired by the living God. Obviously, because the prophets were given revelations by God. And if they were fulfilled by the Son of Man, the living God in the flesh, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And then the same, there's a where did I see that? Yeah, Isaiah prophesies about the second coming of Christ. So if you're going to go ahead and then prophesy about another coming of Christ, I mean, all this seems very, very consistent and way too specific, and it's proven that the original texts were not altered. So these prophecies were literally fulfilled. As long as you're taking the Bible as authority and literal historical fact and evidence. But anyways, guys, I'm not going to ramble on here. Yeah, I do believe that Messianic prophecy to be a genuine piece of evidence for Christianity. And thank you for watching, and God bless.